Hello everyone, and this is for video 2. What we're going to be doing here is we're going to learn how the animation system works here for this particular character in terms of the human IK. Now, important safety tip that I would recommend is make sure that your character is in the pose that they're in. So if you're not quite there with the pose, please take this moment to do that. But if you're done, you can move on with the rest of us. The way that the animation works with this is very similar to what we've done previously. Hitting the S key will basically add a keyframe. But there's a couple things you have to watch out for. Up here, you'll see 3 different stick figures. The first one here is what's called the all body key. Now what this will do is, and just let's go to our first frame over here. Remember, you have to bring this to the left so we can see the very first key. Yep, there we are. And this actually does something very unique. If you select any bone in the body, make sure this is on frame 1, and you hit S, what you do for one bone, you literally do for all of them. So this has a keyframe even right on my hips, but if I select any other part of the body, if for example I select the shoulder, you see that there's a keyframe. I select this shoulder, keyframe. The head over here, keyframe, and so on. So all the bones that are connected to this rig, that the area that's a little bit more golden, that's kind of a factor that's going to be in here. The only areas that this keyframe doesn't affect are the eyes, as you can see over here. I'm selecting both the eyes over in this way, and yeah, they're completely unkeyed. So you will have to key those separately. Relatively simple to do. You select both those joints, hit S for set key, and that basically puts them in the way that they are. So once again, if I was to have this character go from one pose naturally to the other, first thing I'd want to do is, again, put my starting key, which I've done, and I could either click and drag that key over, or I could basically go to where I want my animation to start, and I'm going to have it start at my first second. So in this case, let's take a look at the frames per second over here. I'm currently at 30 frames a second, so I want this to stay to about 30 frames. So I'm moving my time slider over so that can work. So now that that's done, I'm going to key the eyes, because again, the eyes are separate. And I'm going to key the body. So set key over here. So once again, everything's set the way that it is. Now, so my set keys are ready. Now, just one thing I'm going to do, somewhere around the halfway point, I'm just going to have this character just kind of look up and down and such. The way I could do that, if I need to add an extra key, well, I could either keep this as is, or if I just need to get one area, which in this case it's only the head, I could use the second option, which basically allows a person to keyframe a very specific spot. Now, the way that this works is the head is kind of its own autonomous thing, but it also keyframes the neck. If I select the arm, as you can see over here, this area gets highlighted. That basically is letting you know that this entire arm is going to be selected for this. I select this arm, same deal. Select this leg, same deal, and so on. I select up here, again, it's only going to focus in the rib cages. No higher, no lower. And the hands even have their own keys, if you were going to go this route, of course. Yep, basically keyframes all the fingers simultaneously. So these are the only 2 that I really want you to kind of focus and change around. But again, I'm just trying to get my main keys at this point. Now, by the way, if you ever need to get rid of a key, so I'll do this for the purpose of experimentation. If you hold down Shift while a keyframe, and again, that says basically those little red dots or red lines over here, you hold Shift, right click, let go, and then you should be able to delete with little issue. Yep, there we are. And then I could select my full body again, add my S for set key, and that's ready to go. So I'm pretty happy with how my pose is looking. That being said, we need to go to another one. So basically from frame 1 to 30, we have our character in that pose. So that's for an entire second. So what I'd like to do is, for another second, that's going to be about 30 frames, I want him to be in a different position. Well, the way I can do that is, first of all, I can move all the points around. So first thing I would try and do first, try to find another pose. Let's see here. What can we do for this? Now, something you might want to do is just, again, do some research, or, again, do your own. Also, again, Google has a lot of different poses to work with. There's also, interesting, they actually have an anime pose area. By the way, if you are with a family, you might want to keep Safe Search turned on. It might not be perfect, but it should be able to get the general gist of things. Let's see. So I don't want this as anime. I'll go with something more quote-unquote male, and I put that in quotations because there are some situations where you can go with something that would be more traditionally masculine, and it would work really well for a more feminine character, and vice versa. So don't be afraid to experiment a little bit to get an idea of how this potentially could work. But yeah. But again, one of the best ones you could take is the one that you could take yourself with your picture. But I'll leave that to your own better judgment. So let's see here. Okay, I'm going to try and go for something like this. So I think he's going to put more of his weight on the left leg in this case, or maybe I should put in the right one. I'm sorry. Well, his left, our right. So I'll put a little bit more weight over here, put a little bit more power into his potential fist, and yeah, make this into a fist itself. So the only unfortunate part of here is that I'm going to have to close some fists up, but that shouldn't be that bad. Okay, so this is more of a neutral stance. So again, first thing you do is go to the frame that you need to be at, which is going to be, for me, frame 60. And I'm selecting my center of mass. I'm moving the hips a little bit more like this. And let's see here. I'm going to rotate this foot a little bit more. Rotate the upper leg a little bit more. And again, if you need the reference, you can bring it up. I'm going to bring this shoulder up a little bit, and bring this shoulder down a little bit. So I could either rotate this like so. And I'm basically moving my head to the other side. Now for the hand, I'm just going to bring that straight down. Oop, got to be a little careful. Cool. Again, you could use the direct selections, and this one I'm definitely going to be rotating inwards a little bit. And I should be able to actually rotate this hand a little bit, like so, but wouldn't overdo it though. The joys and sorrows is, in this case, the muscles are so big that potentially might be an issue. So I'm just going to rotate the head a little bit more, select both the eyes at the same time, rotate them over. And if all of a sudden my computer's not working anymore, you might want to save. And I might have to stop this video for a second, but if that ends up being the case, so be it. But again, this would be a good opportunity to save often, and so on. So I'm going to pause this for a second. Okay, well, I ran into a bit of an issue. Save the eye motion for last. I happened to run into a little bit of a strange little glitch that seemed to have happened. I think if once we've actually finished the main animation, it should work okay. I'll do a test or two as we progress. But just focus on getting the body part ready. And of course, important part to do, save when you can. I would save this as a new file. I've already saved this as animation test. Of course, we'll rename it something later. But I'm going to hit continue. And he's looking pretty good. So that's the last parts I need to do is the hands. Again, since we're trying to keep this relatively simple, I could actually just select the main controller that's over here. Oop, almost forgot to use the X-ray joints so we can see what we're doing. And I'm just going to close up these fingers this way. And again, the nice thing about the tips, as you can see here, is they basically close the entire thing. I should probably keep, part of me wants to keep it like this, but nope. And I'm going to basically bring this over a little bit and then select the thumb and bring this in. Then I'm going to go to this hand, do the same thing. This time I'm going to go in the different direction. I'm just basically going to close this up. Don't worry about getting it too closed, if that makes sense. And I'm getting this finger in here. Oops. Bringing this area up and over. And bringing this thumb inwards. So yeah, I'm just trying to do the whole pose first. And then once that's done, while still in the full body mode, I can hit the set key here, and that should basically key everything. So I'll try the eyes a little bit later. But the thing I want to do now is I want to show how to do facial expressions. So before, we took a look at how a person could do something like, just going to close that up, like these poses, and basically get these up. So I had to find an old website over here to help out with the, what do you call it? Facial expressions. Sorry about that. And was able to find this again. Now this is a really cool website that I was able to find. Basically it shows how the old school Disney animators were able to get these really cool facial expressions. Now, what we have here is we basically have the different facial expressions going on. And basically the way they're getting these is they're actually acting these out and using these really big mirrors to record all the, to get an idea of how their facial expression elements are put in and putting them in like so. Now, one thing to kind of keep in mind is, I mean, if you can get big mirrors like that, that's amazing. But if for some reason you cannot, there is an alternative that you can do. If you type in facial expressions into Google, you should be able to find different facial expressions that can work for this. So what we have here is we have, again, we can take a look at how the different mouths are going to work in these cases. We can take a look at how eyebrows look, how closed or open eyes are going to look, and pretty much almost anything that we need here. We can go from something more realistic, or we can even search for stuff that's a little bit more toony, depending on how realistic or and such your cartoons end up being, or your characters end up being. So that's pretty much the long and short of the different facial expressions. Now the way that the facial expressions work in this case is we can go to Window. Again, we're going into Animation Editors and Shape Editor. And if we wanted to just make a different facial expression over here, we can do that. So in this case, maybe I'll have him more concentrated, maybe add a bit of a squint. Let's see here. There we are. Or I could just actually just close the eyes a little bit more altogether, as if he's trying to focus. After all, it looks like he's ready to punch somebody. And those areas that I want to change up, I would actually add a key for. Actually, even before I do all this, yeah, there we are. I would go to basically the key where I'd want the animation to start, and everything that I want to change, I would key up. Now, if you think that you might want to have a little bit more freedom in the facial expressions, or if you just want to be a little extra cautious, you could actually select all the facial expressions, although I wouldn't do it to the actual everything past right lip up. But you can highlight those by selecting the first key, going to the bottom, going to this one, and just hit the little black circle we have over here, and that'll add your keyframe. So again, you could do that at the very beginning as well, just to be safe, and so on. Now, the only thing that kind of stinks about this is you're not going to be able to see your keys easily, unlike what we did before for the other parts. But there are ways we could see this. The first method is if we move our time slider around, we should see basically where these areas are for the keys. You can basically see these areas highlighted a little bit more when there is a keyframe, and it's going to be a little bit of a lighter pink when it's not selected. So when we get over here, yeah, I'll just make my changes. So I'm bringing my brow. Oop. Yeah, last thing you want to do is select all of them at the same time to change a face. So I'm going to just bring that down like so. I'm going to squint the eyes a little bit more, but more importantly, I'm going to close them a little bit more as if our character is focusing. And maybe I'll have him a little bit cocky. So instead of having the mouth sad, I'll actually turn that off. And let's see. And I'll have him smile on his left side a little bit. Again, making him cocky. And just selecting all those areas again. Again, basically selected from the first part up here to the last, and I'm adding the key. Now, the reason why I'm adding all these is just a little extra safety. After all, trying to keep control, or basically track of everything that you've keyed, can be very troublesome. But if you do it this way, it should hopefully make the process a little easier. So I'm just going to close this up. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so I'm basically going from one facial expression to this one. Now, if you do need to change or get rid of a keyframe, there's two ways you can approach that. You can go to the facial expression over here, the channel box layer editor over here, select your skin, and you should actually be able to see, let's see, the H expressions, and your keyframes will all of a sudden appear. Now that's kind of a cool thing because you can actually see where your keyframes are located, and if necessary, switch them should that be a thing. Now that being said, if you want a little bit more control, you can also, with this selected, go to Window, Animation Editors, and go to Graph Editor again, and you'll see all your keyframes over here, as well as any changes. So if you do want to make a change or see what's changed in these cases, this will allow you to do so, as well as move them, or in some cases delete them if you need to. But anyway, that's pretty much what we could do for this part. Okay. Now the final thing I just wanted to talk about, and this is more toward if we needed to change, yeah, there we go. If we, in terms of what we're doing for the assignment, if we wanted to basically make sure everything looks the way it should to go from one thing to another, we could basically select areas like the head, and I'm just going to go over here, and we can actually select the section that basically allows us to focus in one particular area, And in this case, I could actually have the head start its animation a little sooner. So basically I can put this to maybe frame 55. But again, you have to make sure that the isolated area, or basically the area selection for the keys, is selected before doing this. But if you do this, I can hit play. I could basically have certain parts come either sooner or later. So for example, I could have this part also come a little bit sooner by selecting the arm. Hold Shift, click the actual key, bring that back a little bit. Something like that. I could even have this other limb start a little bit later. 1 or 2 frames doesn't seem like it would be that much of a difference, but it adds a little bit more of a realistic feel to this, because again, a person's not going to move exactly from one pose to another so perfectly. There's usually going to be little offsets here and there. So being able to work with that does make things a little bit easier. So that basically would be what I'd recommend. So yeah, give that a try yourself. Actually try and get your character from one pose to another and see how it works. Now, if you could get that working for about 60 to 90 frames, that would be ideal. So I'm going to save what I have for a moment. And the last part I just want to show real quick is the eyes. Again, I was having a little bit of trouble earlier on. Might have been a minor glitch, but it seems to be fixed now. So with the eyes, let's see here. I think it basically started earlier on like this. I'm going to select them both while rotation selected. And yeah, so that's looking good. And I'm going to have this finish a little early as well. Just going to rotate these like so. Hit S. And again, these eyes are separate keys or separate elements. So we definitely want to make sure that those are changed earlier. So yeah, that's looking nice. So this is basically what I'm looking for the first assignment. You don't have to go too crazy with your poses. If you want to, you can, obviously. But just try to get your character in a situation where they're going from one pose to the next. So that's the first part of the assignment. Now the second one we'll discuss momentarily. So I'm going to end the video right here. And I'll see you on the final part, which is going to talk about what we're going to be doing for the assignment du jour.